Hi everyone. Today is April 22nd, 2020. And I have an amazing show for you, so I'm very pleased that you're all here. I have a number of things that I want to catch up with you on. One is thank you for your emails. They mean a lot to me, and many of you are being incredibly kind and asking wonderful questions and telling me how much you enjoyed the show. Well, the last couple of weeks I have spent laying a foundation of who I am, what you can expect from me as your hostess on this show. However, starting today, the shows will have a very different layout, and this is what we're going to do. Each week from now on, I am going to start with an inspirational story, sometimes dealing with a family member or myself, but mostly dealing with people outside my family, people that I have had an opportunity to meet. Now, I would normally invite them into our studio and have you actually meet them and see them for who they are. However, during this time of social distancing, we really can't do that. So what I've chosen to do instead is I'm going to share stories with you. People that I've interviewed just before the show so that I've got fresh information, and I hope to inspire you. I'm also still going to share an awesome fact or definition or whatever for that week, and my favorite recipe. So, I would like to encourage you also to like, share, and subscribe. Now, I don't know how old a lot of you are, but people my age never subscribe to anything, because subscribing to something meant signing up for something that was going to cost you money. However, I just found out this week that when you subscribe to a YouTube channel that you like or show that you like, it has nothing to do with money. You do not have to pay a penny if you subscribe. What happens if you subscribe is that YouTube notifies you the next time one of our shows come up. So please subscribe. I may not have your email, or you would maybe prefer not to get so many emails from me. So this way you can be notified and check us out whenever. And I really mean that. We are recording all these shows now ahead of time for two reasons. One is your convenience. You don't have to, at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, sit down and go, okay, I've got to sit here and watch it because it's live. And we don't run into any problems with YouTube not getting it recorded afterwards and then mounting it back up, because that's what happened to our first show. Our first show was done live stream, and YouTube never did end up making it so that it was available afterwards as a recording. So that's another reason why we've gone to recording. The other reason is it's easier from this end. What happens if Wednesday 12 o'clock comes in the afternoon and my life goes to hell in a handbasket? Well, chances are I'm not going to make that show. And I'm so responsible that I don't want to let anybody down. So this way, I have 7 full days for my life to be all chaotic and get one show out instead of 1 hour to get the show out. Even though we're all kind of stuck at home, my life is crazy. And things happen because I'm a wife, a mom, a grandma. It's really things happen, right? And stuff. So, I have an inspirational story for you today. However, I want to talk about the people that I am going to be featuring on this show. They are ordinary people like you and me. They get up in the morning and they have to brush their teeth and take a shower and fix their hair and makeup and go off to work, or, whatever the normal routine is in your life, that's what it is in theirs. And actually, the whole world is filled with people like you and me that get to just be living ordinary lives. Even the rich and famous, they may have somebody else cooking their breakfast, but they still have to brush their teeth. They still have to take their own showers. And for the most part, put on their own clothes and stuff like that. So anybody that I'm talking about is just an ordinary person. However, they get to do extraordinary things throughout their lives that affect other people, their community, or society somehow in a wonderful, positive way. And those are the people that I'm choosing to feature and to inspire you with. Because we ordinary people, honest and truly, do extraordinary things many times in our lives, except rarely is the light shone upon that. It's usually all the disasters. And that's not what this show is about. Our show is about ordinary people that really do amazing things in their lives. So, I want to explain a fundamental belief of mine before we go on to the first one. I am not affiliated with any particular religion that I share with other people. Whatever belief system you have, I am absolutely fine with. I was raised Catholic. However, I follow a slightly different belief at this point in my life. But it doesn't matter. What matters is who you are inside, and are you doing more good than harm? That's what counts for me. So, with that said, I want you to know that I believe in earthly angels. Earthly angels are people like you and me who see something that needs to be done and does it for others, for a community, for the betterment of mankind, whatever. There is no monetary price tag attached to it. It is done out of the thoughtfulness of that individual or the goodness of their heart, however you want to put it. But I believe in earthly angels. And I believe that earthly angels come into our lives sometimes for a short period, sometimes for longer. But those earthly angels inspire us and bless us with their kind deeds. So, with that said, I am going to talk to you about an earthly angel that happens to be in my life. She is a very unique, special person. She's also beautiful. Now, this young woman, at the time this picture was taken, was 26 years old, and a week later we found out that she was pregnant with her first child. We did not know that the day that she was taken in and had these pictures done. Now, she had the picture done for, I believe it might have been a Christmas present. She wanted a professional picture so that her husband could have a beautiful picture of her to have at work in a little frame. And I believe that's the time of year it was. Otherwise, it was for his birthday, but I think we all knew by that point that she was pregnant. So we didn't know that this young woman was pregnant with her first baby when this was taken, and she was just glowing that day. I happened to have the privilege of driving her to this photo shoot and waiting for her while she was there. And trust me, it was so fun to just be part of it, even being on the peripheral of it. I've always enjoyed that kind of event. I celebrate anything you can possibly think of. My children they were born in the US. However, when we moved back to Canada and they attained their Canadian citizenship, it came in the mail, we had a party. Just any reason to celebrate. I feel that life itself is challenging enough, and so if I can think of a reason to celebrate, then I do, so that in my life I try and make there more celebrations than hard times. Anyways, let me introduce you to somebody that I've known since the day she was born. Someone that has truly, truly been a major influence in my life. And her name is September. She is my daughter. I have one daughter and two sons, who you will hear about throughout my show, not today's show, but throughout the shows that I do. September is absolutely brilliant, like my husband. Her IQ is off the charts. September wanted to be a doctor. However, at 16 years of age, one morning, she called me into her room, and she was sitting up in her bed in her pajamas, and I said, "Hi, Cub, how you doing?" She goes, "Mom, I cannot see." I said, "What do you mean you can't see?" And she said, "I cannot see." And I said, "Sweet girl, not a problem. Now, you need to understand this about me, and that is, I've been a family therapist for years at that point. And I had learnt how to control my emotions outwardly, even though inside my heart is just going a mile a minute. What do you mean you cannot see?" So I said, "Not a problem," and I picked her clothes up that were close to the bed, and I threw them on the bed and said, "I tell you what, sweet girl, you get those clothes on. I'm going to run upstairs and get dressed myself, and we're going to pop down the road and see the doctor." So we did. And after seeing our doctor, he asked me to take her to St. Paul's Hospital. It's a Saturday, the roads weren't that busy. St. Paul's is in Vancouver, Canada, which is a fair-sized city of quite a few million people. We lived on the outskirts, and so I drove her to the hospital. When we got there, we were ushered into a room, an examining room. That was actually a room. It wasn't just a cubby in emergency. It was an actual room where two doctors came in. One was a real doctor and the other one was in training. And they looked at September and they asked us a few questions, and then they walked out of the room and they were gone for hours and hours and hours. I believe when they finally came back in and released us, it was over 5 hours later. And what they told us at that point was that September had a brain tumor and that it was pressing on her optic nerves, and that's why she couldn't see. I want you to know that I was speechless. All I said was, "What do we do?" And they said, "We want you to go home and we are going to set up tests to be done. We need an MRI and somebody will be calling you with that information." September and I left. Now, when your child is 16 years old, especially a girl, and you're the mom, one of two things happen. You are either best friends or she absolutely can't stand you. However, September and I were best friends. And I remember driving home, and I took the wrong way home. I took the really long way by total accident. I just started driving like a robot, so I didn't get onto the quickest bridge. I ended up going all the way through Vancouver to the next bridge, and anyways, the trip took longer and longer, and I remember exactly on the highway where we were, heading back to our home in North Vancouver, when she said, if I can't see again, what's gonna happen? And I was grateful at that moment that she could not see me, because I had tears welled up in my eyes, but I was able to control my voice. And I said, "You know what, September? You're gonna be fine. You played the cello and a number of other instruments. I'm not sure what your life is going to be like, but I know it's going to be amazing." And that's what I said to her, and she accepted it. She believed me. We got home, and over the next week, her vision started coming back. And we just waited and waited and waited, and finally, probably 2 months later, she got the appointment to go in and have an MRI scan done of her brain to see what we could see. And she wasn't worried about it, because I said, "Well, I'll drive you." And she said, no, I'll take the SkyTrain and I'll go do this and that. And her vision was back. Her color vision wasn't great, but she could see everything. So I said, "Oh, okay." And she went on her own and came back. I knew she wasn't going to get a diagnosis that day. However, another week or so went by, and I went in to see my family doctor, who I just needed to renew some pills that I was on. And when he saw me, he reached out his hand and he shook my hand and my husband, and he said, "I'm so sorry to hear about September." And it had been a long time since we had taken her into the hospital, so we were both quite surprised. And I said, "Well, what about September?" And he says, "I'm really sorry to hear that she has MS." And I said, "Wait a minute." He said, "Nobody called and told you?" I said, "No, we never heard a word. We had no idea." And that's how I found out that our daughter had MS and has MS. So with MS, the myelin sheath on the nerves, integrity breaks down. And hers was breaking down on her optic nerve. And with the MRI, they were able to see other little lesions which showed up as white specks that showed where the myelin sheath's integrity was breaking down. Now, September had a few other symptoms. Her legs felt heavy every now and then. Her lips. September played a lot of wind instruments. So if your lips aren't working right, you can't blow. However, she still blew that whatever she was playing and stuff. She never missed school. She actually graduated the youngest of her high school. She's absolutely brilliant, and even to this day is absolutely brilliant. However, now she's 40 years old. This picture was taken when she was 26, so 10 years after she was diagnosed. Her walking had absolutely been affected. She was using double crutches. Even when she got married, she was using double crutches, and I had them spray painted white to match her dress. She was and is one of the most beautiful people that I personally have the honor of knowing. Now, that introduces September. September, since then, has had 2 children and has moved from Vancouver to Alberta. There were many reasons for the move. However, a big one that ended up turning out in her benefit was to buy a home in Vancouver is incredibly expensive. Right now, your average home built in the 80s is going for $1 million in the outskirts of Vancouver. So for her and her husband to be able to afford to buy a home, even with our help, their payments would have been exorbitant. However, moving to Alberta, they were able to get a 3-bedroom home with, I forget how many square feet, but I'm not kidding, their yard, the size of their yard is a mini park. It's huge. It's absolutely huge, for about $167,000. And so their payments on the house were reasonable, well under $1,000, actually under $800 a month are their payments. September cannot work outside the home. She, after her youngest was born, Paige, she has 2 children, Liam and Paige. At this point, Liam is 12 and Paige is 10. And September's home that they bought was built in the 1950s. It was an older home that had the living room had been redone. So it had fresh paint and new carpet and was really nice. However, the kitchen was original. And I'm going to bet money that the appliances were original. It was really not set up for someone in a wheelchair. And after Paige was born, by the time she was pregnant with Paige, September was in a wheelchair and has been in a wheelchair virtually since. So I'd say it was, oh my gosh, it was 2 years ago. So September had been married 10, 11 years. They had been in Alberta for at least 5 years. By the time we realized that that house was too much for September or her husband to redo. Living on one salary, even though September now has a pension, she didn't, and that there was just no way that that house was ever going to be the home that it could be and easily accessible for somebody in a wheelchair. That was 2 Christmases ago. I called September between Christmas and New Year's. And I said, Cub, you know I'm a forward planner, so I would like you to give me permission to give you your birthday present, which your birthday's in March, your birthday present early. And like she's going to refuse not. So she said, yeah, sure, Mom, whatever. What's the birthday present? And I said, well, actually, I'm going to be sending an interior decorator into you from Lethbridge, which is a little town, another town about 30 minutes from where September lives. And I said, she's going to come in and she's going to redesign your entire kitchen area. Because my goal is in June, when the weather warms up, we're going to come and redo your kitchen for you. We were all so excited. And so that is exactly what I did. I called 3 or 4 and finally found one that I felt I could work with long distance, and that would take their lead from September and find out what she really wanted in a kitchen. So while that's happening in the background, I knew that Ed and I had enough money to pay for the materials, the new appliances, flooring, everything that needed to be done. And we didn't just want to do the flooring in the kitchen. The living room was carpeted. There were like 3 or 4 different floorings throughout the house, and September didn't have easy access with the wheelchair. There were doorways that needed to be widened because in the 1950s the doorways were really not even as wide as we're used to now, let alone letting a wheelchair in. So I needed cheap labor for most of the work. I come from a large family of workers. All of us are workers. And so first person I called was my sister Leslie. And she's older than I am by 4 years. I tell people she's way older than I am. However, it is only 4 years. And right away she was on board. She said, you know what? While you're paying for that stuff, I'll pay for any of the small appliances or baking trays or dishes or cutlery or whatever that September needs. And I said, wow, that would be amazing. And so Leslie was on board to come, and Les is perfect at painting trim, doors, all that stuff. And then I called my brother Rich. He's been in construction for years. He works for his brother-in-law, who does granite countertops. Rich has laid flooring, he's painted, does granite countertops. Actually, I don't think there's anything in construction that my brother's not capable of doing. And when I called Rich, I knew I was asking a lot. I'm asking people to come for free, give up the time that they're working, which means give up a paycheck, and work with us for free, that I figured would take 2 weeks. And immediately on my phone call, Rich said, I have been trying to think of a way to pay you back for years for having Chris and Kaylee at my place, which are his 2 oldest children. You see, our home is a home that every single person that came, 1 or more of their children had come and stayed for us, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a few months. It all depended on the need. And we had never turned a child down. So Rich was in. And Deanne would come if she could. However, they both worked and they needed somebody to be bringing in an income. So in the end, it was Rich that came on his own. And then Rich said, I'm bringing the granite for September's countertops. And it didn't cost us a penny. And honest to goodness, this granite the countertops he brought were well over $10,000 had I had to pay for it here in Canada. Then I called my sister Sue and her husband Dan, and Dan is really handy also. And Sue is a mega cleaner. She's like Spider-Woman. She climbs on the counters. She's the tiniest one of all of us. And she climbs all over counters and she cleans in nooks and crannies that we wouldn't even begin to think we could reach. And stuff. And then we had asked one of Ed's friends to come because we had taken care of 2 of their boys at one point. And I was trying to get help with people that I felt would be into helping us. And understanding that we were putting all the money that we had into September's home to change her life once and for all, and make it convenient for her. So I want to show you a picture of what September's house looked like before we did anything. These are the original cabinets from the 1950s. And you can see all along the bottom where her wheelchair scraped as she would come up to the counter sideways. The countertops are not at the right height. The place needed everything. The flooring was cracked in certain places. Everything needed to go. So that's exactly what we allowed to have happen. I hired a crew, please the next slide. I hired a crew to come in and completely gut the place, and we paid them to do that. Next slide, please. So that by the time we got there, we were able to build and replace her old kitchen with this kitchen. The man that lives across the street from September is a master carpenter, and we hired him to make her maple cabinets throughout her whole kitchen. Next slide, please. These pictures were taken at the end of the project when we were leaving. There were still a couple more doors that the gentlemen across the street were making. But the island became their kitchen table and their baking area and their craft area. Everything is accessible to September. She can go right under her stove. She has a dishwasher for the first time, and this was just 2 years ago when we did this. Next slide, please. We made sure that the floors carried throughout, that September had a work area that she just rolls up to. Next picture, please. And this is the living room. On the other side that you do not see is the TV and games area and all the places where the children play. Now, you would think that we were September's angels, earthly angels, coming in and changing her life. We were. None of us did it for pay. Most of us put our own money into it, and she and the children have really a lovely place to live. They now have a carpet in that living room, just a throw rug, to add a little bit more color that pulls in the color of the curtains, which Leslie made. The lamps and couch we purchased because the other ones that they were sitting on, you would sit on it and you would go down to the floor, it felt like. There was no support whatsoever. When there is such a huge project, I don't know how people can do it on their own. Young people can. I can't imagine, even when you get the house at a deal, you get it at a deal because it needs a lot of work, even in southern Alberta. And this one did need a lot of work. However, the roof is good, the siding is good, the yard is beautiful. The inside of the house now totally functions for September. About 2 or 3 years before we went in and did this part, Ramps Canada came in and gave September an accessible bedroom and handicap bathroom. So we didn't have to put any money into that. However, Ramps Canada comes in, there's about $8,000, which is wonderful. It's a lot of money. But honest and truly, the rest of the house, and we could have done more, however, was $40,000. And that's as far as we could stretch that. How long did it take us? Well, Sue, my youngest sister that came, and my brother Rich had not seen each other in, I believe it was 15 years. We were all together with Rich for about 10 days. Rich living in the States, we didn't get to go visit him much. We actually had never visited him, none of us. And the reason why is we absolutely love Rich. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do that all of us had children, had our lives, and we're all go-getters. So we were all busy. I was running a clinic. I was teaching. I was writing a book. I had 3 children. And then, as you know from our second show, we ended up with 49 children going through our home in 6 years. We were busy. But coming together for a common love. We all love September. We all love each other's children. That's why they end up in our different homes. Because we care about each other. And we care, and that's where it comes first. This inspirational story is what family can do and how many mountains you can move if there are a number of us. We love each other. There's 6 of us in my family. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers, plus myself makes 6. We love each other. We don't always get along. We don't all agree on the same thing. There are those of us that are closer than others, but in time of need, even if there's been differences, we are there. And our children, there is not one child that belongs to any of my siblings that we wouldn't be there to help. My brother Rich came into town to visit after we were all in Alberta. It was just later that year. And he did Sue's daughter's tiling in her home. I believe it was in the kitchen for Brandy. So there are people that help people in a family. And I am a firm believer that that comes first. It is not your church. It is not your calling in some kind of group you belong to. It is family first, and all the other things follow. You want your kids to grow up to be independent. You want them to be self-sufficient. September is all of those things. So are my other 2 children. However, for September to be really as independent as she possibly could be, she needed a home that functioned for her. We made it happen. Does that make us amazing people? No. It makes us parents that cared, I was able to save that money, and we were able to do it. Extraordinary things come from ordinary people. One of the pictures that I debated putting up and didn't was a picture of all of us that were there, plus September, her 2 children, and Rich's grandson that traveled with him for the 10 days that he was with us. We were all ragtagged. My hair's up in a ponytail that's falling down. Somebody else has a bandana on their head. None of us are dressed in our Sunday best. We have paint all over our clothes. We look like a ragtag bunch, and I didn't put it up. And now I wish I had, because you know what? We had the best time. I did most of the cooking, or ordering in whatever needed to happen to make things work. Leslie, the oldest one of us, not only did she go shopping and ask September, whatever you want. She did laundry that was stacked daily as high as the washer and dryer themselves. And she would just be putting load after load in, because when the demo was done on the house, nobody had sealed it off properly, and tons of dust and construction dust and everything got into all the towels and linens and closets with clothes in them. Leslie washed every single piece of thing in that house. We had my husband and his friend who are techie guys. Set up September's computer, make it so that you can't see any of the wiring underneath her desk and everything. It's all hidden in the back. Leslie paid for that desk. Like I said, Sue was like Spider-Woman, and she had the energy of like 10 guys. Not the strength necessarily, but the energy. She was just one place to another. And this could not have happened without a family that are workers, and that didn't care about each other. There's no crime in caring. As a matter of fact, that's the greatest thing you could do. Does anybody have any idea how much longer it is for the show? I believe I've got about another 15 minutes. All right, so I would like to share with you at this point an interesting fact. So the first week was the definition of a twit, which is a pregnant guppy. The second week was that George Washington had to borrow money to go to his own inauguration because he didn't have enough money, and we thought that that was a financial issue, which most of us have faced. Not an inauguration necessarily, however, being short of money. This one is another awesome fact. And this awesome fact is, and I want you to think about this when you're slouched over and you're not breathing, you need to breathe, because this awesome fact says, did you know that your brain uses 25% of all the oxygen you breathe in? It is used by your brain to keep functioning. That's amazing. I had no idea about that. Now, there is no exam at the end of this. However, it's a great conversational piece. You'd be surprised how many people wrote me about twit and how they had been called a twit, and that they don't think that the people that called them that knew it was a pregnant guppy. However, it's just a cute thing to be able to tell people. Now, what I have for you is one of the best recipes that I came up with for my oldest son's, Randy's, birthday this year. On Randy's birthday, I said, what would you like for supper? And he said, I want a Mexican lasagna. I honestly did not know that there was such a thing. So I came up with my own recipe, and that's exactly what this is. Now I'm going to read it out to you to make sure I haven't forgotten anything and that I was clear enough in my directions. But you grab a paper and pen, because this is going to be up for a few minutes. Not only that, you can put this whole video on pause. That's part of the beauty of it being a recording. And you can write down the recipe or take a picture of it with your phone. And then you have it. Okay, so It's 1 box of lasagna noodles. It's 1 pound of ground beef. 1 or 2 jars of pasta sauce. So depending on if you like it with more sauce or not. 1 package of taco seasoning. And 1 package of shredded cheese. That's all you need for this. And it is so good. Everybody loved it. Cook up the ground beef in a deep frying pan and then drain off the excess grease. Put in about 1/2 cup of water and sprinkle in the taco seasonings over it. Let that cook down till the liquid is gone and all the beef is flavored. Then, what I want you to do is bring out one of those 9 by 13 pans, spray it, or put grease in it, whichever you prefer. And then you start layering. Do a layer of the noodles, a layer of the meat mixture, a layer of the sauce, and then another layer of the noodles, the rest of the meat, the rest of the sauce, and then you sprinkle very generously with cheese. Put it in a 350 oven for 45 minutes. Honest to goodness, my guys went nuts. Whatever was left over was for sure gone the next day. It only tastes better the next day. And things that you can serve this with is, make sure there's a bowl of salsa on the table. Make sure that there's a small tub of sour cream. Because I'm telling you, you put all those seasonings and extras on it, it is one of the best meals. Now, years ago, and I'm talking 12 years ago, one of Ed and my favorite thing to do, if not even longer than that, maybe 15 years ago, was to go to Mexico. And every time we went to Mexico, I would come home with a new recipe because I'm one of those people that's watching and going, I really like that. How'd they do that? And so I would watch. So now, I didn't write this one down, but I'm going to tell you the simplest Mexican dessert that is fruit-based and wonderful. Okay, I want you to decore and peel an apple. And then I want you to slice it like a loaf of bread. So you've got decent size, but not big, thick pieces, just, a decent size of a slice of apple. And then I want you to just dip it in a flour, water, and a little bit of baking soda. And mix that up and then dip it in and put it right in to a frying pan that is hot with oil. And truly, maybe 1 minute on each side, just enough to brown it. So you brown it on each side. However, when you take it out of that pan, I want you to have a dinner plate that you have sprinkled cinnamon sugar in. As much cinnamon as you like, because that cinnamon stops the sugar spike in your blood, or at least controls it. So cinnamon and sugar to taste. Too much cinnamon, though, will give you heartburn. So instead, make sure there's a decent balance. And the moment you take that out of that hot frying pan, I want you to put those apple circles into the cinnamon and sugar on the plate, and then turn it over to get the other side. In the meantime, if it's somebody's birthday, give them a bowl of vanilla ice cream, 2 of the pieces of cinnamon sugared baked apple, And if you want to really go wild, pour over it some chocolate sauce. It is to die for. We had it in Mexico, and honest to goodness, if people got up once to have that dessert, they were back in line 2 to 3 times. It is simple, it is easy, it's hot, it's fabulous in the wintertime. It's a shorter way of doing apple crisp. If you don't want to bake a big thing of apple crisp, you just want to do a couple of apples, that'll do quite a number of people. Just saying, Mexican is one of my favorite foods ever. So, that's our show for today. I would really like to remind you to share, like, and subscribe. Again, it won't cost you a penny, but it will have them send you the link every time we post something. Now, we post something every Wednesday by 1 o'clock. Our show is up. Next show, I want to entice you by telling you that it is just an ordinary person who's done extraordinary things. However, this person is deaf. Now, I happen to know a little sign language, signing. And the reason I know that is that my nephew was born deaf. And he has lived with us on and off over the last 10 years. So he's been a big part of our life. And he's an adult. He's in his 40s. However, it's given Ed and I the opportunity to learn some basic sign language. That said, this story is not about him, but it's about another man that I have met from the deaf community. And he is truly an ordinary person, and I can't wait to tell you his story, who has done things that have changed other people's lives. And that's who we are. We are ordinary people, you and I, that have extraordinary opportunities that as earthly angels we can choose to do or not. A kind deed does not go unnoticed. You may think it does, and it may go unnoticed by the person that you were doing it for, because maybe you've decided not to tell them. Just something that you do and you walk away. Those are fun. However, people in your lives will know. Leslie knows 99.9% of everything I've done, because I usually need a partner in crime to pull things off. And it's fun, it's exciting, and it adds to you and your life. I want to thank you again for tuning in. It's always my pleasure to be here. And I want you to all have a safe, wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.